Something just shifted around the Philadelphia Eagles, and if you've been following every twist of this A.J. Brown situation, you can feel that this is no longer just about football. It's turning into something much bigger, much messier, and potentially far more impactful than anyone expected. Because here's where things take a turn. The ongoing trade buzz surrounding A.J. Brown and a possible move to the New England Patriots has been one of the most talked about storylines for a while now. A lot of that noise didn't come from random speculation. It was driven heavily by reports from Diana Russini. She has consistently been one of the main voices pushing the narrative that Brown has been unhappy, that there's tension, and that New England could be a real landing spot. Now enter a completely different layer to this story, the unexpected connection between Russini and Mike Vrabel, who just happens to be the head coach of the Patriots. Photos surfaced of the two together at a private, high-end resort in Arizona, an exclusive place far from the casual public environments you might expect. We're talking about a setting where access is limited, privacy is high, and the cost alone filters who can even be there. And suddenly, what used to be just reporting starts to look a little different, because when you connect the dots, it raises uncomfortable questions. Russini has been one of the loudest voices linking A.J. Brown to New England. Vrabel is not only the Patriots head coach, but also someone reportedly close to Brown, with communication lines that go beyond just surface-level interaction. So when those two worlds collide, personally, it opens the door to something the NFL takes very seriously: potential conflict of interest. Think about it from the Eagles' perspective. Howie Roseman and the front office have been managing these rumors while trying to protect both the team's leverage and Brown's value. Reports suggesting that Brown is unhappy could naturally lower his perceived trade value. And if those reports are influenced, even indirectly, by someone connected to a team interested in acquiring him, that's where things start to feel off. There's even a strategic angle here that you can't ignore. If a narrative gets pushed that a player wants out, it can weaken the selling team's negotiating power. Suddenly, instead of demanding a first-round pick plus more, you're dealing with teams trying to buy low. And interestingly enough, there have already been reports suggesting the Patriots have been hesitant to include a first-round pick in any potential deal. So now you're looking at a situation where the Eagles might feel like they've been put in a position where their leverage was quietly being tested behind the scenes. At the same time, there's another side to this that makes it even more complicated. If Vrabel truly is a source of information, then in a strange way, it could actually make some of the reporting more credible, not less. It would mean the information is coming directly from someone with real insight into both the Patriots' intentions and Brown's situation. But credibility doesn't erase the ethical concerns, it actually intensifies them. And then there's the optics, the setting, the exclusivity, the nature of the interaction. It all feeds into a narrative that's hard to ignore. This wasn't a Slucci encounter at a crowded NFL event. It was private, it was deliberate, and it's now public. Add in another reported sighting of the two together during the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and suddenly it doesn't feel like an isolated moment anymore. For Eagles fans, this creates a frustrating situation, because now, even if a trade were to happen between Philadelphia and New England, it wouldn't just be judged on football value. It would be scrutinized from every angle: fairness, integrity, influence. And you can already imagine the reaction if Brown ends up in a Patriots uniform after all of this. Would it be seen as a clean deal, or would it always carry that shadow of what really happened behind the scenes? And here's the key part: this could actually make the Eagles dig in even harder. If there's even a hint of perceived manipulation or outside influence, Roseman has every reason to raise the price, not lower it. A first-round pick might not be enough anymore. It could take more, significantly more, to make a deal happen under these circumstances. So now the entire situation has evolved. What started as trade rumors has turned into a storyline involving relationships, credibility, leverage, and the inner workings of how information flows in the NFL. And the biggest question hanging over all of this is simple, but it changes everything. Do you think this situation just made an A.J. Brown trade to the Patriots more likely? Or did it completely destroy that possibility? Because if you really think about it, this isn't just about whether A.J. Brown gets traded or not anymore. It's about how the Philadelphia Eagles respond to a situation that could be perceived as crossing a line, even if nothing has technically been proven. And inside that building, you have to imagine that Howie Roseman and the front office are looking looking at this from every possible angle. Not just, is this a good football trade, but what message does this send? Because if there's even a slight belief that another team, like the New England Patriots, might have tried to gain an edge through indirect influence, that changes how you negotiate, that changes how you pick up the phone, that changes whether you even want to do business with that team at all. And that's where things could really take a turn that fans aren't fully considering yet. Because in a normal situation, if a team like New England calls about A.J. Brown, you listen, you evaluate the offer, you weigh the value. But in this case, there's now an emotional and reputational layer attached to it. If the Eagles feel like the narrative around Brown's unhappiness was amplified in a way that didn't fully reflect reality, then why would they reward the very team connected to that narrative? That's where the idea of leverage flips completely. Instead of Philadelphia feeling pressure to move Brown, they might now feel empowered to hold him even tighter, to say, if you want this player, you're gonna pay above market value. We're not talking about a standard package anymore. We're talking about a deal that clearly benefits the Eagles to a level where any outside noise becomes irrelevant. And let's not forget something important here. A.J. Brown is still an elite receiver. You don't just move a player like that unless the return is undeniable. This isn't a rebuild situation. This is a team that still sees itself as a contender. So unless an offer clearly strengthens the roster, there's no real incentive to make a move, especially now. At the same time, this entire situation has put Mike Vrabel in an interesting spot too, because whether it's fair or not, his connection to Diana Rossini now adds a layer of scrutiny to anything involving the Patriots and A.J. Brown. Every report, every rumor, every leak, it's all going to be questioned. And that's a problem for New England, because even if they operate completely clean from this point forward, the perception has already shifted. Around the league, in the media, and especially among fans, there's now this lingering doubt, and perception in the NFL can be just as powerful as reality when it comes to negotiations and reputation. Now zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. This could end up affecting more than just one potential trade. It could impact how insiders are viewed, how information is shared, and how teams protect themselves from narratives that might be working against them. The terms conflict of interest and collusion have already started floating around. And once those words enter the conversation, it's hard to put them back in the box. And here's where it gets even more interesting. If the Eagles decide not to trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots specifically because of this situation, that doesn't mean trade talks are dead altogether. It could open the door for other teams to step in. Teams that weren't as heavily linked before might now see an opportunity. And if that happens, the entire market for Brown could shift overnight. So instead of this being a direct path to New England, it could turn into a bidding war, or it could completely shut down the idea of a trade altogether. And the timing of all this couldn't be more critical. With the NFL draft approaching, decisions are going to have to be made soon. Draft capital is one of the biggest pieces in any potential deal, and the Eagles are in a position where they could either use those picks to build around Brown or demand them in exchange for him. But after everything that's come out, you have to ask yourself, would Philadelphia really feel comfortable sending one of their best players to the very team at the center of all this attention? Or has this situation created a level of tension that makes that outcome almost impossible? And the truth is, even after everything we've just broken down, the situation still feels like it's only at the beginning stages of unfolding. Because once something like this hits the public, it doesn't just disappear, it evolves. Now you have the entire league watching closely. Front offices, agents, players, everyone is paying attention to how the Philadelphia Eagles handle this. Not just because of A.J. Brown, but because this could quietly set a tone for how situations like this are dealt with moving forward. If there's even a perception that narratives can be influenced in the background, teams are going to start guarding information even more aggressively, and that could make deals harder across the board. Not just this one. At the same time, don't overlook the player side of this. A.J. Brown is right in the middle of all of it, whether he likes it or not. His name has been circulating in trade rumors for a long time, tied heavily to the New England Patriots, and now all of that noise has an entirely different context attached to it. So the question becomes, how does he respond? Does he stay locked in with Philadelphia and block out everything? Does he address the rumors publicly? Or does this ongoing speculation start to create real tension behind the scenes? Because even if some of these narratives were exaggerated, when they keep resurfacing over and over again, they can start to take on a life of their own. And that's something the Eagles have to manage carefully. Because if they truly believe Brown is still fully committed, then moving him now, especially under these circumstances, could send the wrong message to the locker room. It could feel like reacting to outside pressure instead of sticking to internal evaluation. But if there's even a small concern that the situation could become a distraction long term, then you at least have to explore your options. That's the balancing act. And meanwhile, for Mike Vrabel and Diana Russini, this isn't going away anytime soon either. Every report, every appearance, every piece of information connected to them is going to be analyzed differently now. Fair or not, that's the reality of how quickly perception can shift in today's NFL media landscape. So now we're sitting in a moment where multiple outcomes are still very much on the table. AJ Brown could remain with the Eagles, and this entire situation ends up strengthening Philadelphia's stance while shutting down the Patriots' angle completely. Or the opposite could happen. New England could come back with an overwhelming offer that forces the Eagles to separate emotion from business and make the deal anyway. And if that happens, it might go down as one of the most debated trades in recent memory. Not because of the talent involved, but because of everything surrounding it. That's what makes this so fascinating. It's not just about what happens, it's about how and why it happens. And as this keeps building, you can almost feel the pressure tightening around every decision that's about to be made. Because the closer we get to the draft, the less room there is for uncertainty. The Philadelphia Eagles have to be crystal clear on one thing. Are they building with AJ Brown as a centerpiece? Or are they willing to flip him for assets that reshape the roster? There's no middle ground anymore, especially with everything that's happened. And what makes this even more intense is the timing of the information that has come out. This didn't surface months ago when there was time for things to cool down. It dropped right as teams are finalizing boards, locking in strategies, and preparing for one of the most important moments of the offseason. That's not just coincidence. That amplifies everything. Because now, if you're Howie Roseman, every phone call involving the New England Patriots carries extra weight. Every offer has to be evaluated not just on value, but on optics, on trust, on the long-term implications of doing business under this kind of spotlight. And here's something else that hasn't been talked about enough. What if this actually backfires on New England? Think about it. If other teams around the league sense hesitation from Philadelphia to deal with the Patriots specifically, that could invite new competitors into the mix. Teams that may have been sitting quietly could now see an opening, and all it takes is one aggressive front office to change the entire landscape of this situation. Suddenly, instead of the Patriots trying to negotiate from a position of patience, they could be forced into a position of urgency, and urgency drives